just thought that I don't want to leave uni yet. So my undergrad was in English and creative writing at Brunel, and I absolutely loved it, but I just felt like just wasn't done yet. I've always loved learning, not everything. I'm terrible at maths, but definitely English and writing. And I just knew that, yeah, it was my calling to stay. I know that sounds so geeky. So yeah, after my undergrad, I had the summer off, and then I basically just went straight back into uni to do my master's.
So, hi everyone, hope you're doing well, hope you're looking after yourselves. Yeah, can't believe it, we're on the 7th episode of season 4 of Pick Up the Mic. Technically, our 47th episode. We're slowly approaching that 50 episode mark, which is obviously amazing, and is something that we're hoping to celebrate with you guys in person at some point. But yeah, we've come to discuss another important topic with another amazing guest. And today's episode is all about supporting charitable initiatives. And what better way to tell us how we can do that to then having this amazing guest speaker, Syndey. Now, I always say this at the start of the episode, I don't want to bore you with the details of the speaker because I'm not them. I can't show the enthusiasm and the great things that they do as well as they could. So I'm going to hand over to Syndey as our amazing guest speaker to just please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Jeffrey, for having me on the podcast. It's really nice to be here, and it's actually my first podcast ever, so it's a good experience. But yeah, I'm Syndey. I'm 23 and I live in London. God, I feel like I'm doing Love Island. And yeah, I live in Hackney. So yeah, quite east of London, and I currently work in communications for a charity called Birthrights, as well as being a part-time master's student at Brunel University, and I study creative writing.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And yeah, 100%. I know what you mean. I think the amount of times we've asked guest speakers to introduce themselves, it kind of does feel like that Love Island introduction. And it's just like, oh yeah, what's your special talent? Or what's your special... And it's just like...
Pretty much.
Oh, but no, it's great to hear the amazing work that you do. And the fact that you're doing this while doing your master's is incredible. And it's definitely something you should definitely be proud of. I guess before we officially start... Oh, no, you're very welcome. Before we officially start, I know we might touch on, Birthrights a bit more, but there might be some listeners listening or watching, and they might be thinking, what is Birthrights? And yeah, so very quickly, could you just let us know what Birthrights is?
Yeah, basically, Birthrights is a charity that advocates for human rights for women and birthing people going through pregnancy and childbirth. So it's pretty much anyone who is planning on having a baby or is about to have a baby, who basically just want to know their human rights when having a baby, because sometimes care isn't always accessible and it doesn't always go right. Even though we have like the third best healthcare system in the world, the NHS, it still doesn't mean that all outcomes are positive for people. And that's everyone from every race and gender, like everything. So yeah, we basically just help. We have an advice line where we help women and birthing people who want advice to say, oh, do I have to have this type of birth? No, you don't. You can choose whatever birth you want to, no matter what doctors say, and you can use the law. And it's not illegal, it's literally the law, but nobody knows that. And things like we speak a lot about informed consent and where you want to have your baby. It's not against the law to have it at home. But even though it might sound a bit boring and, oh, I'm 23, why do I work for a birth charity? I'm not really planning on having kids soon. It's really good to know your rights in any healthcare setting, because now when I go to the doctors, I always know what I'm talking about, and I know how to have really good informed conversations and make sure that I know my rights and that I'm not getting taken advantage of. Because as a young person and as a young Black woman, sometimes you do get taken advantage of, or you're not taken seriously just because of the way you look. So it's always good knowledge to have. And there also may be some young women and birthing people who are watching, who are planning on having children soon. So you should definitely check out Birthrights.
Oh, perfect. No, the perfect. That's really great. And I think you're definitely right. I think especially I had the pleasure of working with my sister, because she's sort of doing something similar to what Birthrights are doing. She's working on an app. She's working on an app essentially that looks at like collating all this information, because I think, like you said, even not when it just comes to giving birth, I guess healthcare in general, we do have a tendency to not really know exactly what we can and can't ask. And sometimes we feel like if we do ask something sort of like going against the rules and we're just, you know, if you ask them a question, we're doing something wrong. But no,
so get in trouble.
Exactly. And I think especially like you were saying for people from people of color, essentially, like it's just that step complicated. And I know with the app that my sister was working on called Mummy and Me, that was one of the things that came out that that she was saying that like as black women are 4 times more likely to die during childbirth than their white counterparts. And for people of Asian heritage, it's twice as likely. And it's one of those things where, like you said, you genuinely feel like sometimes when it comes to doctors, you can't ask certain questions. But actually, you know, you can talk about all these different things. And yeah, I think it's really amazing, like you said, what Birthrights are doing. So yeah, I think personally, you know, like you said, I disagree. I think no one would ever say that what you're doing is boring. I think that's amazing work that you're doing. So yeah, no, thank you. Well, I should be saying thank you for doing this work. And yeah, I think
no worries. Yeah. I feel like it's sad that we do live in a society where we do feel like we have to advocate ourselves, because you would think, why can't we just get the choices that we ask for? But sadly, we don't. And I will just say one more thing about Birthrights. Last week now, we released a race inquiry that we'd been leading for a year, where we collated a lot of data and lived experiences of women and birthing people who are Black, brown, and Asian and mixed ethnicity, who basically reported having worse experiences of care due to the color of their skin. Women died, babies dying, really horrible stuff. Sorry, I don't know if I should have done a trigger warning for that, but yeah, really horrible stuff. And not just the people that are having the care, but the people that are giving the care. Healthcare professionals also face a lot of racism in the NHS, and it's really sad, but Inquiry has done a lot of good work, and it's definitely something that everyone should just check out and stay informed on, because that could affect you, it could affect your partner one day, so it's definitely good to just have a quick read about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, like you said, it is one of those things where that lack of representation can be really bad. Because I know, like with my sister, for example, the whole reason why she started that app was because when she was born, she was diagnosed with, well, she wasn't diagnosed, but she essentially was jaundice. And my parents had noticed, and they were saying, you know, she doesn't look right for a Black baby. They already had one child, so they knew, they already had my older sister, so they were just like, we know what a Black baby should look like. We don't think this is it. And then they were just told by like the healthcare workers that, no, this is like, there's nothing wrong. And then my dad was just like, no, something is wrong. And like my parents was like, no, we want to see, like, we want this taken up. We want to see a senior doctor. And it was only through escalating that they did, you know, find out she had jaundice and were able to treat her. But it's kind of like what you're saying, that if you don't have these options, or you don't know that these options are available to you, you can't actually do anything.
Jaundice, that really came up in our inquiry. A lot of Black women and partners, parents, reported that their babies had jaundice and it wasn't picked up, because healthcare professionals aren't necessarily always trained to see health conditions in every skin tone. So they don't know that in jaundice, Black babies tend to go a bit more yellow, but they don't have that training, which is also something that we do at Birthrights. We offer training to get healthcare professionals training for everything, not just for one race, basically. Like, yeah, we just want to be inclusive. We want everyone to access good care. But that's really interesting to see that. I don't even know you, and I've heard that. It's crazy.
Yeah, honestly. And I think it's great to say that what don't Birthrights do? Because even training healthcare professionals, you guys are definitely multi-talented and doing amazing work.
But great, yeah.
But I guess going on to our first official question is, I guess at this time of recording, it's May. So, you know, there'll be a few people who you know, submitted all their exams, submitted all their coursework, and they're heading to that point of graduation. And essentially, I wanted to ask you, after your undergraduate, what did you do after you graduated?
So after my undergrad, I think we went into a pandemic. I'm pretty sure it was, 2020. So that was great. That was a really fun summer. We basically, was just inside and I didn't do anything. And I just thought that I don't want to leave uni yet. So my undergrad was in English and creative writing at Brunel, and I absolutely loved it. But I just felt like just wasn't done yet. I've always loved learning, not everything. I'm terrible at maths, but definitely English and writing. And I just knew that, yeah, it was my calling to stay. I know that sounds so geeky. So yeah, after my undergrad, I had the summer off, and then I basically just went straight back into uni to do my master's. But a master's, it can be a lot more expensive, especially when you don't come from a privileged family. So I knew that if I was going to stay in uni, I would have to work on the side. So I made sure that I basically did my master's part time. So yeah, that's what I did.
No, thank you. And no, it's not nerdy. I literally did the exact same. So it's great. I probably should say at the start, I'm also a Brunel student, both for undergrad and currently for postgrad as well. And I think, like you said, I graduated literally the summer just passed. And I was kind of like, I was lucky because I did a placement year as soon as the pandemic hit. So I was kind of like, okay, like it's probably great that I took a year out to work.
Yeah. And then focus on.
Yeah, and when I came back, I was just like, okay, this is good. But I think, like what you were saying, I was kind of just like, I don't really feel ready yet to just go out and work in the world. I was kind of just like, I feel like there's a lot more to learn. And I think definitely, like you said, so my master's is in sustainability, entrepreneurship, and design. And I think from doing my master's, I've definitely felt like more equipped to go out and work in the world. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, as I always say, I'm not saying that everyone should do a master's, but I feel like, especially if you don't know what you want to do after university, sometimes a master's can be that way to just narrow things down. But yeah, I think like you said, thank you. And I think definitely, like you said, it's taking into account that, yes, it is also a bit more pricey, especially if, depending on what you're doing, it can be more work intensive. So I've always said that here's me thinking I did my third year and we're basically in a lockdown. I can basically do anything. And when I tell you that, I think my first term of masters, I was just like, when it ended, I was just like, wow. Yeah, that probably was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do at uni. And it's just 100%. I think it's just like knowing that, you will need to put in a lot of work, but if you do a course that you like or something that you really enjoy, you'll come out and you'll just be like, you know what? It was tough. It was kind of hard, but actually I really enjoyed all that skills and all the different things that I learned. And I think it kind of just makes you feel more at peace with like what you want to do. So I think like I was saying before about that clarity, but also I think it's knowing also what you don't like. So I know that I don't want to work in a lab. As soon as I did lab work for my first year, I was just like, yeah, no, I don't want to work in a lab. And I think that's also that, yes, your masters can be pricey, but that also can be a good thing to also learn, to know that actually, I don't really want to go and work in a certain organization, or I don't want to do this type of job, because it then means that you can then think about, well, actually, if this isn't what I want to do, then what can I do that interests me, and what can I do that's fun and stuff like that. So I think that's really great to hear that you're still, and I think it's amazing that you're working and doing your masters, because that takes skill. That takes skill. That's all I can say for that.
I think, yeah, with my master's, just to say that because I do creative writing, I think what really made me stay is that anyone could write, literally anyone can write, you just need a pen. But in order to do that, it just takes practice. So if I'm developing something and when I'm not at uni, I really just forget about writing and reading altogether. But knowing I'm at uni and I have deadlines to meet and I'm practicing my skill, I'm attending lectures, hearing a lot of experience from other people and getting the best writing techniques, creative writing techniques. So that's what made me stay, because I definitely, as a side note, want to produce some piece of work that I can publish one day. And I just felt like a master's really would force me to actually put the effort in now, rather than leave it till later when I know I will be working full time and I won't have as much time. So hopefully, yeah, the cost will be worth it in the long run.
Definitely, and we look forward to whatever you publicize and you create. Yeah, we're looking forward with anticipation. So yeah, that's really great. And I guess leading on to our next question, you sort of touched on it when you spoke about Birthrights, but essentially, why did you decide to work for a charitable organization?
Okay, right. So this is a bit of a long story, but I'll make it as short as I possibly can. So, yeah, during the pandemic, when I was doing my master's, still doing it, almost done. But the first year I was doing it, and I was like, okay, I need a job, and I just really was tired of working in like retail and stuff. I was like, I need to gain experience because, I don't know, my mom forces on me every day. So she's like, yeah, you need experience, you need experience. So I was like, okay, no, I actually need to take this seriously for myself now. So I was on universal credit at the time, yeah, because it's just at home. And there was a scheme going around, and it's called the Kickstart scheme. Oh, actually, you know what? I have to go back a bit. It was before that. Oh, right. I remember now. Sorry. This is like 2 years ago now. So basically, yeah, before I got this job, it was the summer, and Brunel had sent an email around, and it was basically like, would you be interested in working in communications? And I've heard of communications because my mum used to work for Nike PR. So I knew what communications was about, and it was something I was interested in because I like people. So basically, when I read the email from Brunel, it was from this foundation called the Taylor Bennett Foundation. I'm not sure if you may have heard of it before, but it's basically a foundation where they get young, like, people of color into the world of comms, because I think at the time there was only 1 in 10 Black people that works in communication. Like, it was a very white dominated industry and male dominated industry. So I basically got a mentor from a lovely lady called Katie Fox that worked at Tin Man Communications at the time. And she basically mentored me for 6 months, just telling me exactly what communications is, what she does on a day-to-day basis, how PR works, and how it's completely different to paid advertising and stuff. And I loved it. So once I finished my training with Katie, that was all online because of the pandemic. Then I was then put onto universal credit, and I was like, okay, I need to get a job in comms because I'm not going to get all that valuable training and then work in retail. So then the government put out this scheme called the Kickstart scheme that I think a lot of young people at the time heard about, because we basically didn't have any jobs, and it was really unfair because there were so many graduates of all this all these degrees, but they had no jobs. So a lot of companies used it where the government basically paid them to employ a young person for, it could be, I think, 6 months to a year. So that's where I found Birthrights and a few other organizations, and I applied for, and I got quite a good few responses, and I loved it. And I decided to go for Birthrights because it was working for a charity, but in communications. So basically, in essence, it was just promoting the charity's work on social media, on their website, in newsletters and stuff like that. So I started working there for about 6 months. And then at the end of this Kickstart scheme, it's down to the employer whether they want to basically keep you on or let you go. And luckily, thankfully enough, Birthrights kept me on. So I've been working there ever since, and it's been great. And on the side, I have done a few more like comms things by myself, because there were people that I knew that had really good businesses. Now that I knew I had the skill to promote it, I was like, okay, I work part-time, so I have a few hours in the week where I could help promote other people's work. So there's a lovely lady who's actually my auntie called Vanessa Taylor, and she came out with a children's book called Baller Boys, I think about 2 years ago now, and I helped her promote that a while ago, and she's doing excellent now. She goes into schools. It's basically a book about football, but it's like all inclusive. It's got kids with dyslexia, multiple disabilities. The main character is a Black child, and it's really nice to see because there's just not that representation. So yeah, I've basically done a lot of communications, which has led me into the charity sector. But I feel like I've been speaking for a while now.
No, I was listening very intently. First off, let's start with the big thing. I can't believe your mum worked for Nike and Nike Communication. That's amazing.
Back in the day.
And I'm sure she had a wonderful time with that. I mean, honestly, like looking at how like we said about communications and how the organizations like Nike promote stuff is just like it's crazy. Like I know I watched there was the Netflix special of The Last Dance of talking about like Michael Jordan, talking about Michael Jordan, his journey, and I watched the episode where they talked about like how Air Jordans came to be, and like all about that. I was just like, wow, that is like marketing to its best.
Yeah, there's so much behind PR. Like you have to be really creative, I think, because it's not paid. So you need to know that your ideas are going to want to get people to buy your product, basically.
No, that's so true. And I think like next, like I said, your story is really interesting because the fact that you did all of this work and like, I think like you said, you utilized the Kickstart scheme, you worked with Birthrights. They enjoyed your work so much that they invited you back. Even the fact that you were helping out family on the side as well. That's incredible. And I guess it speaks to your marketing and your comms skills. So that's great to see that you're doing all these cool things. And who knows, maybe someone listening might be like, might need to send Syndey an email to maybe see if she's free to do some comms stuff for me.
Oh, you never know. Or if you want to know how to get into PR, everyone should definitely check out the Taylor Bennett Foundation. It's a really good gateway to just get an idea of what it is, and it's free. So it's just a few hours of your week, or maybe less, maybe an hour a week or something like that. And it's just a really good skill to have. Like, I feel like maybe if I didn't have that experience, Birthrights maybe wouldn't have picked me. You never know. So it was good to have that under my belt, definitely.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Now we're going to switch things up with the next question. And we're going to start this off with everyone's favorite and new segment of Mic Check, where we put some interesting facts and figures. Now, for this question, I'm going to put the information first, and then I'm going to ask Syndey the question. So the information comes from the National Council for Voluntary Organizations. And essentially, these are some like quick facts, and we'll include a picture of this as well, about charities and the charity sector. So, for example, they say that within the UK, charities within the UK have an annual income of about £43.8 billion a year, and 41.7 billion is spent helping millions around the UK and globally. They also talk about that within the charity sector, they employ 827,000 people, which is approximately 2.7 of the UK's workforce. And they also go on to say that more than 21 million volunteers help these charities to work. And essentially they talk about that while there are a large majority of there are a few big charities, the vast majority are small charities with lower levels of income. Now, you might be wondering, why did Jeffrey just give all this information? And the reason is, our next question for Syndey is, if you were, let's say you had the money, or let's say, you're ready to start your own charity, what sector would you go into and what would it be on?
Okay, you're going to think this is very, very random, but I know exactly what I would start because it's something that I'm already interested in. This will be a quick backstory, but one of my modules for my master's is called Writers at Work, and it's how to get creative writers into the world of work, basically. And we had an assignment where we had to pick a project to do that was really close to our heart and how we would put that into society, and it could be funded or not funded. So I basically came up with a brand called All Dogs Go to Heaven. And it's basically, it was based off of my own experience of losing an animal. I lost my dog, Aslan, I think 2 years ago at the start of the pandemic, and I had him for about 12 years. And he was honestly my best friend, my brother, all of that. So I just knew from my own experience that I basically dealt with grief in silence, because usually, especially in the UK, we have a stiff upper lip, and grief is not taken seriously when it comes to pets dying. It's just oh, you'll be all right. Oh, it's just an animal. But for someone that is actually going through grief, I think we forget to realize that grief is grief. You can't say, oh, it's for this, because if that person feels those emotions and experiences that mental health, then it is grief and it should be taken seriously. So I thought of this project and I thought there are so many people on this planet that are going through grief in silence. So that is a lot of mental health going around that's not being spoke about. So I'm actually waiting for my assessment back for this project. But what I've decided to do is basically create free creative writing classes online for people that are going through grief, basically just to aid in their journey so that they feel like they have a safe space to speak about their pet loss. It could be recent, it could be in the past, it could be coming up, just so that they know that they're not alone. Because I felt like if I had even that little inch of like community or someone saying it's okay, like you're allowed to cry about your dog, it would have made me and my journey so much better, because it's something I still deal with by myself. So I feel like it's not just for them, it's for me. So yeah, I'm kickstarting those creative writing workshops in the autumn once I finish my master's, because there's just too much going on right now. But I also need to get a qualification in pet grief counselling as well, just so I have a bit more knowledge of how to actually help people. So if I was to create a charitable organisation, it would be All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Oh, wow. Let's just pause right there, because that is, I think, like you said, that is really incredible work that it would do. Because I think, like you said, there is that tendency where people don't really think about how important pets can be, especially to certain people, you know, for elderly people who might live alone, or people who live alone in general. That might be the only interaction they have daily, especially like you said, during the pandemic. I know everyone knows that there was a sale, like rising of like people buying pets. Yeah. But to be honest, even before then, like you said, that it's, you know, pets can sometimes have that closer connection to you because, you know, you're spending all that time with them, you're looking after them. And I think that that's really true, that it isn't really something, and even off the top of my head, I was thinking that, no, there isn't really a lot that, you know, advises how to like look after your mental health when something happens, or like, you know, if you are concerned about, you know, a family member or a friend who's lost a pet, there's never really something that's just like, oh yeah, you know, like call this number or do this. It's more of like, oh, you know, like, look, this is how to look after your mental health in general, which yes, is definitely important. But like you said, sometimes the grief for that can almost be as real as, you know, going through like a mental health period by itself. So yeah, I think definitely this would be a great thing, and fingers crossed, look forward to when it starts.
Thank you. Yeah. Like I was going to say, forgot to say, it's definitely free, but at the end of each session, I've set up a platform called Coffee, where it's basically, if you want to pay like the amount of a coffee to my class, you can, but it's completely up to you. Like, I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to take their money. It's honestly just a bit of fun for me, speech marks, because yeah, I just knew that like, it's just a nice thing to do, and it doesn't take much of my time. And I love writing, so it'd be nice to get people to write poems or letters about their loved ones, because we don't get funerals, we don't get that closure, and sometimes we have deeper emotional connections than you do with humans to animals. So yeah, it's definitely something that I hope to work on in the future. So thank you.
No, you're very welcome. And I think, like you said, one of the things that I've always believed is that creative outlets, whether it's creative writing or music, is they do help you sometimes deal with these emotions. Like I know, like sometimes when I've been going through stuff, writing poems is like just like been really nice to like sometimes get the thoughts, I guess, off your chest, and just to put it on a page. And I think that that's really good, because I think, like you said, sometimes there are moments when you might be going through something and you just like, you can try and explain it to someone, but they'll never really truly understand it unless they've been through it. So sometimes being able to just, you know, like write it and just put it on a piece of paper can make you actually think like, wow, you know, this is actually how I was feeling. Like, whether you write it from your perspective or, you know, you do the poem in a way that it's from the perspective of someone else. Like, I think it's really good to do that. And I think, yeah, well, like writing poetry is definitely one of the things that I've just loved. I've sort of like put it on the back burner at the moment. But yeah, definitely, like you said, I think that's that's something I've really enjoyed. And I guess similar to you, I'm sort of like in the middle because I don't know what to do. But at some point I do want to like start to publish some of these, and whether that's like through an anthology, or like,
great.
yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah, fingers crossed it all goes well. But yeah, I think it's great to have these creative outlets to just, to, you know, get what's on your mind sort of like out there on a piece of paper, and it can make you truly actually think about like, you know, I was feeling angry about this, but was it something else that was going on? Or like you said with the, you know, with the pet, you might be years or like months later, or even like a few days afterwards, and you're just like, no, I feel perfectly fine. And actually, you know, you do the workshop and you're just like, actually, you know, it turns out I have not processed this at all.
It's very therapeutic. Writing it has so much therapeutic benefits, and there's a lot of evidence to support that.
Definitely. And I guess going to the next question, I know we've spoken about, you know, what you would do with your charity, All Dogs Go to Heaven, which sounds amazing. But essentially, as individuals, how can we support the work that charities do?
Basically, I feel like you need to find a charity that is close to your heart, or a cause that is close to your heart, and then just go and research it. Like nowadays, there's honestly a charity for everything, because I had no idea about Birthrights, and now they've been on like the news all of last week. Like they was on BBC News, ITV News all day, and I was like, wow. So sometimes it's sad to say that you kind of have to go through something to want to find out about it, but I'd say it's definitely a start to think about something that what affects you, or people that you know, people that you love, or the outer world, what is something that you really want to change, and then start with that. And then I think a lot of people get put off charities because they think, oh, I have to donate. I'm not doing that. You don't just have to donate, even just spreading the message, sharing a post on social media, commenting, asking for help for yourself. Like all those little things really does make a difference for charities. It doesn't have to be profitable.
Definitely. I think that's so true. And I think, like you said, there is that like tendency to think, oh, you know, if there's a charity, you have to give money to them, or you have to, you know, always do work, you know, do these paid stuff. And it's just like, no, you know, sharing a post. A lot of charities, like you said, do offer like free resources and don't expect anything. So even just like, you know, if you use the resource and it really impacted you, it's really benefited you, just being like that to, you know, whether it's to friends or online, like whatever, is still a great way to support them. Because I feel like, you know, we as a team love talking about mental health, and we always say that like Mind as an organization have like great resources. Like one of the things that I found really interesting was during the whole pandemic, they were just sharing to different, like, I guess, targeted people, like how they could look after their mental health. So like they said, as a manager, you know, this is how you can ensure that your mental health is okay, but also the people under you, their mental health is okay. They were just they were just like, students, you know, you've got exams, you've got all this stuff, everything's sort of up in the air. This is how you can look after your mental health. And I think like I was sharing that throughout the pandemic, because I was just like, yeah, you know what, some of this stuff is really good. And especially because I was on placement at the moment, I was just like, yeah, actually it would be really great if but like other managers knew about this, so they could also ensure that they were implementing this within their teams. So yeah, that's really good, and thank you for that. And I guess
no worries.
Oh, no, thank you.